Hello, 6th grade social studies student. This is Miss Tolman helping out Miss Halbert. We are reading through your lessons. We are on our Unit 6, Feuds and Crusades. This is Lesson 4, the Middle Ages. Woohoo! Now is the time where you take out your fancy notebooks so we can get going and you can take some notes as you go. It's fantastic. Not only to garner your vocabulary to help you later on in the questions, but to have that vocabulary on hand for when you go to take the test and study for the tests and quizzes that are coming up. All right, so we do have a little bit of vocabulary, not too bad. It starts with cathedral. It's a large Roman Catholic worship building. Charter is a feudalistic system in which there is one ultimate landowner. Crop rotation. It's the planting of different crops each year to prevent the depleting of a field of its nutrients. Curriculum, it's a course of study. A guild is an organization of people with common interest working together. Illumination is a decorated and added to hand copies of manuscript. And a decoration added, so it's an illustration. Nation state is a country with a territory and distinct cultural heritage and language. Vernacular is the language of the common people. The period of European history from 1000 to 1300 is known as the High Middle Ages. Most historians agree that changes during this time resulted from the rapid increase in population. In some regions, the population doubled or more. Several factors influenced the population boom in Europe. Scientists believe that from 800 to 1300, Europe experienced a warm period. Temperatures rose and remained at high levels for longer than before. The warm period made it easier for farmers to grow crops and support more people. The food production was also increased by the widespread use of new tools and methods. Teams of horses and heavier plows made plowing easier, and this allowed for the planting of more seeds. The planting the same crops every year can deplete a field of its nutrients. So farmers used crop rotation to plant different seeds each year in a portion of the fields when unplanted each year. This allowed the land time to recover. Trade. The military campaigns, called crusades, increased the exchange of goods between Europe and the Middle East. Cities in northern Italy, Venice, Pisa, and Genoa, developed into major trade centers. Goods were brought to their harbors. Merchants then distributed them throughout Europe. In northern Europe, the region of Flanders was the center of trade, located along the coasts of present-day Belgium. France and Holland. Flanders was located along several important trade routes. Merchants from France, England, and Scandinavia and Germany traveled to Flanders to buy and sell goods. The barter system was popular in the Middle Ages, the early Middle Ages. In a barter system, people trade goods and services, not money. For example, a farmer might trade grain and milk to a merchant for tools. In the High Middle Ages, gold and silver began to replace the barter system. Cities would now mint coins. However, there was no standard value for coins. Counterfeit currency, which is fake money, also presented a problem to merchants. Money changers handled financial issues. Money changers were present at centers of trade. Eventually, money changers organized into companies, and they offered services such as personal and business loans. Loans granted to kings and popes by moneylenders made military campaigns and building projects possible. Moneylenders later became known as bankers. And here is a wonderful click-through of the medieval trade routes. Cities in the middle class. In the High Middle Ages, new cities grew along trade routes. Cities were populated by freemen. However, most cities were built on lands owned by a feudal lord. City leaders banded together to purchase their independence. This came in the form of a charter. A city charter was a legal document that outlined the rights and liberties of the city's freemen. Feudal lords made money from the sale of charters. However, charters contributed to the breakdown of the feudal system. As the number of cities grew, more people lived independent of a feudal lord. The new middle classes emerged, consisting of merchants, bankers, and craftsmen. The breakdown of the feudal system was particularly evident in the cities. City charters allowed the middle class to be self-governing. They elected officials from their own ranks, and they did not rely on a feudal lord for their protection. Loyalties changed. People began to see themselves as citizens of a nation-state. The emergence of a European nation-states were heavily influenced by the rise of the middle class. We do have some click-through people you need to know. Good idea to click through that and find out what fancy people you need to know about. During the 13th century, every local Roman Catholic church provided every local Roman Catholic church provided elementary education. These schools were for religious instruction. However, only the children of the wealthy nobility could usually attend. Most children needed to help their parents just so the family could survive. The increase in trade brought many changes to education. Groups of businessmen with common interests worked together in guilds. The guilds established schools. The schools trained guild employees in business and law rather than religion or theology. The school at Paris led our modern-day universities. The teachers at the school formed a guild known as Universitas. Students that completed basic courses went on to study theology and medicine. The University of Paris attracted many ambitious students. Its medieval graduates included several popes. Students were mostly males. Girls were sent to convents to be taught by nuns. Moreover, the girls were put in convents, tended to be of noble birth. Most girls of common breeding could not afford the luxury of a formal education. Bologna in southern Europe took the lead in education of women. The first female students at Bologna enrolled in the 13th century. Female professors were permitted to teach in the 14th century. Medieval literature. During the Middle Ages, books were very expensive. This was because they had to be reproduced by hand. Monks working in monasteries spent many hours copying ancient books. To decorate the text, pictures were often painted on the manuscripts. This practice was known as illumination. Many illuminated manuscripts were decorated with gold or silver. Few people could read during the Middle Ages. However, scholars and theologians wrote many books. Because books were so expensive, there were no textbooks for students to use. Teachers owned the only books in the classroom. Teachers read from their books and discussed the passages. Latin was the universal language, of the learned and their books. As education increased among the middle class, books began to be written in their vernacular. Vernacular is the term for the language of the people. One of the most famous Italian authors of the Middle Ages was Dante Alighieri. During the 14th century, Dante wrote his most famous work, the Divine Comedy. Written in vernacular Italian, the epic poem was read by thousands of illiterate Italians. Writing in the vernacular had many benefits. It not only encouraged people to learn how to read, but also increased the demand for books. Poetry was the most popular form of early vernacular literature in England. Geoffrey Chaucer wrote a collection of poetic stories known as the Canterbury Tales. The stories capture the language of the 14th century English people and their culture. Scholasticism. A renewed interest in the classical Greek and Roman works influenced the curriculum of the universities. A curriculum is a course of study. Religious scholars sought ways to unite classical and church teachings. Chief among the scholars was Thomas Aquinas. Aquinas was a monk. His most famous work was Summa Theological. It set out to prove the truth of his teachings and practices of the Roman Catholic Church. Gothic art and architecture. Roman Christianity directed and funded the arts of the Middle Ages. The cathedrals, which are large worship buildings, were the center of church life, and thus they were designed to instill the teachings of Roman Christianity. Church officials decided to teach the people about the Roman Catholic faith with art. This was because a few common people could read. Out of this approach to teaching emerged the Gothic style. It had delicate, light, and bright features intended to point the soul heavenward. Bible stories were carved into the stone walls, painted on murals, pieced together in stained glass, and displayed on the altars. The people of the High Middle Ages did not need to read to understand. Their religion was one of observation, experience, and even mystery. And that is the high Middle Ages in your lesson 4. Let us know if you have any questions. We are here to help you. We are here for you. We got you. You are doing a fantastic job. Guaranteed. Keep it up. You're doing great. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.